Welcome back, everyone. It is a spooky episode of From the Stands College Football Game Day Show. It is week 9. It is Halloween weekend, and we got a few spooky segments this week, along with, as always, our shots and chasers, the games of the week. Andy, Tom, how's it going on this spooky Halloween week?
Spooky, spooky. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm sure Andy's doing much better after Monday night there, huh?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Bears get an unexpected win on Monday Night Football, where they dominated 33-14. I know this is a college football show, but thank you, Tom, for setting me up for that. And it was my birthday, so just a hell of a birthday present there. One I did not think I was going to receive, and those are the best. So yeah, I'm doing good. Illinois 2:30 on ABC this Saturday at Nebraska. Big one, fellas. We are in control of our own destiny in the Big Ten West. It's terrifying to think about. We will we'll see how the rest of the season goes. I'm excited to talk about last week. Excited to talk about this week. Excited to be here as always.
And we will jump right into the weekly recap, to quickly recap some of last week's games. Tom, what do you got for us?
Well, what do I got? I got a lot. Clemson over Syracuse, a very closely contested game. Now, I don't know what to take from this game. Is Clemson still that down dog team we thought they were this year, or is Syracuse legit? That's what I want to know. They did beat Syracuse in this game, 27-21. The performances by Will Shipley continue to carry Clemson. Shout out to their offensive line as well. Um, Quickly, the Brian Kelly effect is real for LSU. They just knocked off number 7 Ole Miss, 45-20. Look, people can say what they want about the way he left Notre Dame, and I totally understand that, and I'm with you. As you can see, I'm a Notre Dame fan. But Brian Kelly is a fantastic college football coach. LSU should have had no business competing with Ole Miss, especially with the way they performed against them last year. And then, I mean, Bo Nix, 5 touchdown passes, only 6 incompletions for Oregon. Should I say no more? Absolutely outstanding week of college football. Oh, and TCU coming back after down double digits at half. Incredible. Incredible week of college football. Those 4 games stuck out to me the most.
Andy, Bill, what about you? What was your games of the week?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta take my hat off to the Oregon Ducks and specifically Bo Nix. I mean, Tom mentioned it. I know they were favored by 6.5. Excuse me, in this game, but I thought coming in that UCLA was going to continue that undefeated season. I had picked so many weeks in a row against UCLA, and they kept making me look like a fucking idiot. Um, and it not this time. It was the Ducks' huge win at home. It's I obviously UCLA is still alive. That being their first loss, but the Pac-12 just always seems to do this to itself. Just kind of eating itself alive when you think, one team has a grasp on the conference and a legit chance at the CFP, one of the other teams right below them comes out and just makes them look stupid. So hats off to the Ducks, 45-30. And then I'm going to shout out Oklahoma State, 41-34 over Texas. Texas not back, confirmed. Their third loss on the season. Oklahoma State gets a big bounce back win, one that I talked about last week on the show, one that I think they really needed, one that I think helps the resume a little bit. But they are still playing catch up to TCU. Like Tom said, another great win for the Horned Frogs. So yeah, I don't really have much other than that, to be honest with you. But I think most impressed with Oregon after this week.
Yeah, they definitely made me look the stupidest, egg all over my face on that one, because I rode Bo Nix into the ground, as we tend to do here, along with a few other QBs, and they just looked really good. UCLA couldn't really get anything going until late. But yeah, some of the other games, Liberty 41-14 over BYU. BYU was looking like a great shot at the CFP early in the season. They have fallen apart. Liberty just hammered them. Miami had 8 turnovers versus Duke. this weekend. Don't know if you guys saw the shot, but they had a ton of recruits in the stands, and the facial expressions, they were not looking too happy about what they were seeing. I don't think they're going to be choosing the University of Miami as their school. Maybe they'll bring out the big bucks for the NIL contracts and snag one of them, but I don't know. They did not look pleased. Yeah, like you guys said, TCU, that was a really gritty comeback win. Those are the wins you need if you want to get to the playoffs. So they looked really, really good. And then, yeah, Tom, like you were saying about Clemson, no one really knows. But one thing I do know is Cade Klubnik, the true freshman, looked extremely
Mm-hmm.
good coming in for DJ. They might have a QB controversy on their hands. I know a lot of people are saying no, you still go with DJ anyways, but he's sort of like the Spencer Sanders situation where sometimes he can have a good play, but can you rely on him to do something special? If the game's close, if it's, if you're down early, I don't think so. So if Klubnik looks good in practice, I really think they should ride with him because he's an average QB at best, and Klubnik looks pretty good from what we've seen so far. So that'll move us into our
Wow.
first segment, Night of the Living Dead here, boys. First spooky segment of the week. Andy, we'll start with you. Give us some of your spookiest situations in college football, plays, coaches, players. What you got for us?
So I think first off, I think this is a pretty obvious one. It's Texas A&M and the absolute dumpster fire that we have seen from them so far this year. I mean, all this talk all off season was how, it was about this recruiting class, one of the highest rated recruiting classes of all time. We talked about how they were just bought a lot of NIL money going there because who in their right minds wants to spend 4 years in College Station, Texas? I know I don't. And I'm not a part of that crazy cult they have down there. I mean, it's not only the football team not performing on the field, it's their corny ass yell leaders going viral for some just terrible, terrible jokes. Now, this week, multiple freshmen suspended for apparently getting high in the locker room, like smoking pot in the locker room. Before a game, like I'm all for getting stoned and having a good time. I've never been one to shy away from that. If we're in the trust tree here, but you can't be doing that in the locker room, especially before a game, and just thinking that's cool. Like that makes me question the entire culture of the program and what these coaches, really have going on. I mean, this is a team. Where are they ranked in the preseason? This is a top 10 preseason team, I believe, that now sit at 3-4
Yeah.
and have just had losses at home to Appalachian State. I mean, shout out to the Mountaineers, but um, what else? They lost pretty badly. No, they just lost to South Carolina, who's terrible, pretty convincingly too. Like it's just all bad for the Aggies right now. And then if I'm going to number two, this hurts my heart because I hyped them up the first 5 weeks of this show. They started 5-0. They've lost 3 straight. They're without their starting quarterback. It's the Kansas Jayhawks, guys. Um, ugh, ugh. Just so much hype around these guys. Not really at the start of the season, but kind of after they got rolling a little bit. They win 2 in a row, then it's 3, then it's 5. And everybody's like, do we have something going on in Lawrence, Kansas right now? They get game day for the first time. But it's not looking great. Obviously, they're still 5-3. Obviously, it's still a winning record. And if you are a Kansas football fan, you will take that any day of the week. I just am nervous that this starts an even bigger slide. Like this 3-game losing streak, like the winning streak, turns into 5 games. And then potentially 7 games. They miss out on a bowl. I want the Jayhawks in a bowl game. I want them to win. But the vibes are definitely a little bit lower for Lance Leipold's program at the moment. And who knows if he's even there next year. There's been talks of him maybe getting the Wisconsin job. The Nebraska job's open too. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so those are my two: Texas A&M and Kansas, 2 teams that at one point of the year had a shitload of hype around them, feeling really good about themselves. At this point right now, definitely don't feel as good about themselves as they once did just a few short weeks ago. Illinois playing at Kansas next year, by the way. Got the Jayhawks in the non-conference schedule. They just released that today.
Mm.
Love it. What about you, Tom? Who are some players, coaches, performances that died a tragic death here this season for you?
This first one happened back in week 2, and there was a lot of hype with Billy Napier coming in as head coach of the Florida Gators. All the recruits he was talking with getting in, and then Florida, after their big win against Utah in week 1, ranked number 12 in the nation, and they lose at home in the swamp to Kentucky by double digits. Um, Anthony Richardson is really the storyline of this day. All the hype around him this year as a Heisman candidate potentially, in my opinion, went out the window in week 2. He had a QBR of 2.9, had 2 interceptions in that game, went 14 of 35. That is well under 50% completion percentage for 143 yards. How are you going to tell me you come in and you beat Utah one week and you lose to Kentucky that bad the next week? I'm sorry. Florida was eliminated from the college football playoff after week 2's loss this year, in my opinion. Next up, I have the ACC preseason player of the year, quarterback Devin Leary, out for the season with a torn pectoral muscle following a 1917 victory over Florida State back on October 8th. Now, this was an ugly win against an FSU team. And at the beginning of the season, guys, I think the three of us could argue that we would consider NC State to potentially compete in the ACC title game, though. Now, with Devin Leary out for the season, that's out the window. And he could have declared for the draft this year as a redshirt junior. But in my opinion, this Night of the Living Dead theme we have going on here is going to cause him to try to rise from the dead next year when I think he has to return to NC State for his redshirt senior season in order to gain some of his draft stock back. So very unfortunate for Devin Leary. And then this third one is absolutely hysterical. The Nebraska Cornhuskers. Wow. Well. We all know Scott Frost got fired this season. And unfortunately, he'll be more remembered for that than going undefeated at UCF. But things got even worse this past week with interim head coach Mickey Joseph. He made a huge, I wrote this in all caps on my prep, huge mistake yesterday. He was asked during a press conference about a recruit by a reporter, Malachi Coleman. Mickey Joseph responded, "I'm just joking with you, man. You always uptight, but no, you're right. We got Malachi." And Malachi Joseph has not made a verbal commitment to Nebraska, and Nebraska is not even number 1 on his list. So those are my 3, and I think it's quite embarrassing for an interim head coach to say, not only you're trying to get this Big Ten job down for next year and potentially audition for other coaching jobs, and you're going to come out and say something stupid like that. I mean, that's worse than James Franklin's press conference last year. I mean, you want to talk about spooky season? That's some spooky shit right there.
I love it. We'll move into mine. My first one kind of covered it, Tom, a little with your Florida one. I'm going a little bit more specific with Anthony Richardson here. Kid looked like, at least in the papers in preseason, to be a favorite for the Heisman. We've all seen his skill set. He's showed up in some big games. Last year did it. It's just not happening this season. The last 5 games, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Anytime he gets remotely under pressure and rushed in the pocket, he's out of there and he just doesn't know what to do with the ball. Sort of like a newborn giraffe out there. And in the last 5 games, he has barely eclipsed a 50% completion percentage. Those are Spencer Petras numbers, boys, and that is not a camp that you want to be in. So a rest in peace to Anthony Richardson's phenom-esque season that he was supposed to have, that we were told he was going to have. No Heisman this year for Mr. Richardson. And then my second one here, I have Brent Venables. Another situation where high praise was given all around. He comes from Clemson, where he did a fantastic job with their defense. Oklahoma brings him in to replace Lincoln Riley. They snatch him up. They think it's going to be a phenomenal replacement because what do you need in the Big 12? You need good defense, uh, something lacking in pretty much every Big 12 team for the last decade. But currently, he has the Sooners sitting dead last in the Big 12 in points allowed per game. All that despite the fact that they played their two out of conference games. The teams have a combined record of 7-9. So even those teams are god awful. They kept them to 16 combined points, and even still, they are dead last in the Big 12 in points. And then just in terms of general offense, they're getting slashed up like a victim of Jason in one of the Halloween movies in terms of total yards given up. They sit second to last in the Big 12, behind only Oklahoma State in terms of yards given up. Both teams giving up about 450 yards of offense per game. So that is just way too much to give up. You can have your offense chase or try to chase, I guess, and they've done a decent job of it. But when you're giving up that much, it's too much against the quality of teams that they have in the Big 12. So Brent Venables really needs to pick it up. But for this season, rest in peace to his defense and the Oklahoma Sooners season. Moving into our next segment, we have House of Horrors. We're going to give you some of the worst plays of the season here. We got a few picks each. Tom, we'll start with you. Give us your worst, most horrific plays of the season so far.
Well, since Halloween is on Monday, and this weekend is basically Halloween weekend, um, we have to go back to week 2 when my Notre Dame Fighting Irish played Marshall. Unfortunately, they lost 26-21 at home. Tyler Buchner had 2 interceptions, a nightmare game. You could see he's throwing the ball in the flat like a moron. And that brought me some horrors. I didn't even get to watch that game. I was working a baseball game during that Notre Dame game, and I was unable to concentrate on my work, noticing that Notre Dame lost to Marshall. Unacceptable. That is not the standard at the University of Notre Dame. And it, quite frankly, scared the shit out of me. And it ruined our season. Next up, Oklahoma was a team that I predicted to be in the college football playoff at the beginning of this season. Wow, was I wrong. They lost to Texas at home 49-0. Texas shuts out the Sooners for the first time since 1965, so over 50 years ago. And they were outgained 585-195. Again, an absolute disaster in Tuscaloosa. And I'll be honest with you. I know Dylan Gabriel's back now, but man, I was spooked out by that game as well because then I knew, well, crap. Two teams I thought were going to do really well this year are actually really, really bad. And to be honest with you, when I compare Notre Dame and Oklahoma right now, who's worse? I can't even tell you.
Oh man, I'm sorry you had to do that first one, Tommy. But
Got it out of the way.
yeah. What about you, Andy? What are your scariest plays, teams, performances of the season so far?
This one still pisses me off because Illinois should be 7-0, not 6-1, but we'll absolutely take it. Take where we're at right now. It's the 3 turnovers versus Indiana that are absolutely killer. The one Brian had queued up for us is the Luke Ford fumble. I believe it's at the end of the first quarter. Illinois driving fumbles, like I think right before the 50-yard line. Indiana gets it, kills some momentum. Really, the 2 ones that hurt probably more than that was a Tommy DeVito interception in the red zone in the second half, and also he had a fumble that was lost in the second half where Illinois was also on Indiana's side of the field. And, we can say all we want about the refs and, the Brian Hightower touchdown that was called not a touchdown, that was definitely a fucking touchdown. You still can't make those kind of mistakes on the road. You can't make them at home. You especially can't make them on the road in enemy territory and just come away with no points in those situations. Absolute killers for your football team, and ended up being the reason that Illinois lost that game and currently sit at 6-1 and not undefeated at 7-0. My second one was. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh yeah, how could I forget? It's Iowa's offense. They just fucking suck. Like I was trying to think of like one specific clip to send Brian, but I was like, literally, whatever you can find is probably fine. I've seen it in person with two eyes. It is bad. Spencer Petras is bad. I do. I'm not going to defend Spencer Petras. I will say he doesn't really have a lot to work with at the same time of him being just fucking god awful. We're used to Iowa being a really, really good, always having a really, really good offensive line, and we are not seeing that this year. And it's below average for, not just Iowa, but for a regular college football team. It's not good. They definitely miss Lindenbaum. To throw out a name there, fellas. They have no receivers that are of note. I think his best target is Laporta, the tight end. Shout out Tom, my tight end guy. But I sent Tom and Brian before this a clip of Petrus's first pass from last week against Ohio State. Just straight to the Buckeye defense. No Iowa receiver in sight. One of the worst passes I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, if you have any time, you're feeling down on yourself, you need a laugh, you just need to feel better about your football team, throw on some Iowa offensive highlights from this year and just have a good old time. Because yeah, it's an absolute house of horror. Their offensive coordinator sucks. Nothing will change until Brian Ferentz is fired, and we all know that his dad, the head coach, isn't going to do that. So Iowa, your offense is going to continue to suck.
Yeah, I definitely should have gone with that other play, but I probably saved the audience from some nightmares.
My eyes.
Exactly. For my first one, we're going with one that just happened this past Saturday. The Weber State long snapper having one of the worst performances of all time, probably the worst long snapper performance of all time, skying four balls over the punter's head, all made it into the end zone, which was, I mean, it's pretty hard to do because some of those were up at like the 35, 40-yard line. He just launched them all back there. Kicker was getting run down by defenders, so he just jumps on or kicked a few of them out of the back of the end zone. 4 safeties. That is good for the FCS record for most safeties in a game. So scary performance from that guy. I don't even know if he needs to dress up this weekend for Halloween on campus. People will know who he is from that performance last week. And then secondly, I have the Bowling Green fake field goal attempt against Buffalo. Probably, I don't know if this counts as the worst, but it's the worst of the season for sure. They go with a little dump off from the holder to the kicker. Kicker trips over his feet. Classic college kicker move right there. Just another baby giraffe type situation. Can't even hold on to the ball. Buffalo picks it up and they run it in for a touchdown. That's not what you want happening when you're in the first quarter and already down by 17 points. So just not a great performance from him as well. That'll wrap up our House of Horrors. Sorry you guys had to watch that one. I know those are some scary players, and I hope none of them were your teams in those clips. But that'll move us on to our shots and chasers. The games of the week. Starting at noon, we have Penn State taking on Ohio State. Penn State does get home field advantage here, but Ohio State, one of the best teams in the nation. Tom, we'll start with you. Who's taking this one?
Well, Ohio State's 7-0. They're favored by 15.5. Penn State, one loss. Last week, Ohio State drilled Iowa 54-10, I believe. And CJ Stroud, his numbers look really, really good. Partially due to the fact that his running game is outstanding and he has 3 wide receivers with 6 touchdowns or more. Stroud has been really solid since the first couple weeks of the season. I'm not going to go out and say he's been a Superman, but he does have 28 touchdown passes to only 4 interceptions, which is very, very impressive. Their running back, now I was a little bit concerned with their running back position, but Mayan Williams has done a fine job. 9 touchdowns on the ground. And You want to talk about a receiving core that lost Jackson Smith and Jigba early on in the year, that lost Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson to the NFL draft. Look what they have, guys. Igbuka, 7 touchdown receptions, 730 yards. Who the hell is he? I don't know, but he's on the script. Marvin Harrison Jr., 38 catches for 598 yards and 10 touchdowns. The son of Marvin Harrison, the great Colts legend that we all know. And, you look at those yards per catch, he's a huge deep threat. And then Julian Fleming, intermediate guy, 6 touchdowns on just 17 catches. Are you kidding me? This Buckeye team is scary, and that's why they average 49 points per game. They're also really good on the defensive side with Tommy Eichenberg and Mike Hall, that defensive tackle who I really like. And then we get to Penn State. The compare and contrast of this game is something else. Sean Clifford, he's improving, 4 touchdowns on the ground this year at the quarterback position, which is nice. I do like their running back duo of Nick Singleton and Katron Allen combined for 11 touchdowns, and they're almost at 1,000 yards combined. And their tight end, Brenton Strange, is one player I want to point out because he has 4 touchdown receptions on the season. I believe he leads all Nittany Lions in touchdown receptions. And it's interesting that we mentioned this player, Brenton Strange, because it was last year around this time where James Franklin had that quite strange press conference following a loss to Andy's Fighting Illini. So that's why I'm picking Ohio State in this game. Different year, same shit. Give me the Bucks.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all Buckeyes here. I mean, Ohio State, number 6 offense in the country, 521 yards per game. Oh, by the way, their defense is the number 5 defense in the country as far as yards per game goes. So you got it on both sides. I think Tom broke it down way better than I could. I'm taking Ohio State. I still don't trust Sean Clifford. I do think he's looked a little better at times this year. I do still think he has shown us who he is at certain points this year as well. Some stuff that we've kind of seen the past, it feels like 100 years that he's been at Penn State. I just don't see Ohio State losing this game. To me, I don't know if Ohio State loses at all this year. I think maybe until the playoff, obviously, but I don't know if anybody in the Big Ten beats them. Obviously, I think Michigan has the best chance of matching up with them. I just don't see the Nittany Lions keeping up. I think Ohio State wins. I think they covered the 15.5 as well.
Yeah, so like the theme of the card this week has almost looked a little bit. It's like a lot of trap games, but I'm not sure Penn State is going to catch Ohio State in the trap here. Defense not too shabby. They only allow 18.9 points per game. And their only losses to Michigan, who's, I mean, I guess I don't know why I even stopped there for a second. They definitely are the team that matches up the most in terms of talent-wise to what Ohio State has in terms of how deep they are. But they got blown out in that game, and I think we might see a similar thing happen here. Typically, Penn State gets a little bit of juice from those night games where they do a whiteout. They already did it. This game's at noon. They're not going to get it here despite the home game crowd. Penn State, they've thrived on the ground the most. They have that duo of Singleton and Allen, both getting more than 75 carries so far. But Ohio State on the other side of the ball is only allowing 91 yards per game on the ground. So, yeah, if Penn State can't do anything through the air, which I don't really trust Clifford to do, this is going to be a really long game. The spread at 15.5 even still looks a little juicy for Ohio State. So I'm going with the Buckeyes as well. Then moving into noon, our first orange team on this Halloween slate, we have Syracuse taking on Tom's Notre Dame. Tom, we'll start with you. Is Notre Dame pulling up the upset here?
If I may, I just want to analyze this game before I answer that question, Brian. Syracuse 6-1, 16th ranked team in the nation. They're favored only by 2.5 against the 4-3 Notre Dame team. That should tell you something, right? If this game is at Notre Dame, they're probably favored against the 16th ranked team in the nation again. Notre Dame's only 4-3, but you know what, guys? They're still Notre Dame. But let's talk about Syracuse first. I love this defense. I really, really do. They only give up 15 points per game. They have a dual threat backfield with running back Sean Tucker and quarterback Garrett Schrader, who can hit you from both angles. He kind of reminds you of Daniel Jones a little bit for the New York Football Giants. Each of those players have 6 rushing touchdowns, and Aronde Gadsden, the second, is a beast. Again, yards per catch for him is insane. 37 catches for 592 yards. Back to that defense for a second. Let's do the math. They forced 13 turnovers in the first 7 games. They're causing nearly 2 turnovers per game this season. That is a lot. Now, when we go to Notre Dame's side of things, Drew Pine, 6 weeks as the starter now. It's been an upgrade over Tyler Buchner, but the efforts, again, they kind of threw Pine into the fire here. In my opinion, he should have been the starter to start the season. Audric Estime's done a good job causing havoc in the backfield for us, 6 touchdowns on the ground, and the best tight end in the nation this year. I don't care what's going on with Georgia. His numbers aren't as good. Mike Mayer, 44 catches, 526 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He's the only real weapon Notre Dame has in the passing game. All Syracuse has to do is take Mayer away, and Notre Dame is toast, guys. How are they going to score points? I mean, J.D. Bertrand and Jack Kaiser, they must contain Tucker in the run game. This Notre Dame defense has only forced 3 turnovers this season. How do you pick Notre Dame in this game? Simple. If you're me, if you're a Notre Dame fan, and I'm picking the Irish because it was around this time 2 years ago that they upset Clemson at home. This time, they're in the Dome. I hate Syracuse, even though I'm from New York, and I cannot pick the orange here. The green will shock the orange.
All right, Andy, upset coming or no?
Absolutely not. Syracuse's defense is going to shut down this mediocre Notre Dame offense. I'm sorry, Tom. I hate to say it. What am I actually?
You're not
I don't.
sorry.
I'm not sorry at all. No, I think Syracuse is a better team here. They absolutely had an opportunity to go on the road this past week and take out a Clemson team. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way. For me, this is a bounce back win, and it's by at least 10 points. I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot, but I like the orange here. Tom mentioned, Tucker in the backfield. I think if you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. If you haven't seen, after every game he tweets about his performance, and he says if he was pleased with it or not. So hopefully after this game, Sean Tucker will be pleased with his performance. Hopefully Schrader bounces back from a tough interception on the Clemson side of the field last week that sealed the game for the Tigers. But I don't know, man. The Syracuse defense is stingy. They don't allow a lot of points, and I think the Orange and Dino Babers bounce back this week against Notre Dame.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, first off, I told Tom directly after the show last week that Notre Dame was going to win this game, and I'm sticking with it. It was just I had that feeling from watching that game against Clemson that this was one of those Clemson type games where they could pull off an upset. Syracuse played really well against Clemson last week. They were up for most of the first 3 quarters, and then fell apart to a freshman QB. So there's still things that need to be assessed on the defensive side of the ball because, yeah, they're getting those wins. The defense is stingy enough, keeping points off the board. The offense looks pretty good, but this is still a Notre Dame defense. I know this is not one of their top years, not one of their best years, but it's still a Notre Dame defense that's been pretty stingy as well. Syracuse has had some close calls against middle of the pack teams, 2 teams that I would rate maybe on the same level, a little bit worse, depending on which of these 2 teams, how you see them. But Purdue and Virginia, they won those 2 games by combined 5 points. I think at the very best scenario, Purdue's middle of the pack and Virginia is not that great. So those are 2 concerning games for me. Syracuse is lucky here that Pine is a little closer in skill set to DJ than Klubnik in terms of throwing ability. That'll help him a lot with that medium range defense. With the majority of his production coming in the short to middle distances there for Pine. So we're probably not going to see any long balls that can, tear up the Syracuse defense and get them down early. Garrett Schrader, the last 4 games, a lot of mistakes, only 5 TDs, 4 interceptions. So, yeah, he's been pretty good in terms of the entire season, but he's on a little bit of a downtrend. The last time we had Notre Dame on the card here against BYU, um, the thing I liked the most was that Jaron Hall couldn't throw a deep ball, and that middle of the field, that linebacking core, and getting that secondary tucked in, primo for Notre Dame. If they can keep it short again here with Schrader, I think we're going to see a dogfight here, very low scoring across the board. I think both teams are a little bit equal here. I think Syracuse gets a bit of an edge in QB play, but it's still close enough for me that Notre Dame can pull the upset, especially if that score does stay low. So I'm sticking with my pick. Tom, Notre Dame upsets Syracuse at Syracuse. Next up, moving into 3:30, we have the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Georgia ranked at number 1, taking on Florida unranked. Sorry, sorry, Florida fans, not your season. But this is always a dogfight in itself here in this rivalry. Tom, can they pull it off, or is Georgia gonna roll here?
I'm flying into Jacksonville Friday night, where this game is being played, just so you guys know, about 5 minutes away from TIAA Bank Field. So I will be bringing that Georgia Bulldogs luck because I'm not a big Florida Gators fan. Anyway, um, Gators are coming off a bye, so they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. But what happened before the bye? Well, they lost to a Brian Kelly led LSU team by 10 at home. Not a good look. Anthony Richardson on the year. Let's go over his stats for the year. We want to talk about Night of the Living Dead, House of Horrors. Anthony Richardson's stats on the year, he's completed 56.5% of his passes, 6 touchdown throws, 7 interceptions. Now, he does have 6 touchdown rushes, but his QBR has absolutely been down the drain. And people are talking about this guy being drafted next year. If Richardson was smart, he would go back to Florida next year. He has a lot to work on before he gets to that next level in the NFL. Next, Montrell Johnson, I think he's a really good running back. 7 touchdowns on the year. But is that enough? Florida doesn't have many weapons offensively anymore at the moment. Again, all their weapons are young recruits that Billy Napier is working on bringing in. When I look at Georgia, I see a prototypical college quarterback in Stetson Bennett. Again, he's not going to flash you a lot with the numbers passing wise, but what does Georgia rely on? Their running game and their defense. They have 3 running backs with 4 touchdowns or more, and Dyson Edwards, Kendall Milton, and Kenny McIntosh. Tight end Brock Bowers has had a down year a little bit. I know, they haven't been targeting him as much because defenses have been taking him away. That's been part of the game plan. Look at what Missouri did a few weeks back, guys. They almost pulled that one off. So is this Georgia team vulnerable? Absolutely. Absolutely. The intensity of this rivalry is what makes this game so special every single year, which is why I don't trust that 22.5 point spread, even though Florida does have 3 losses on the season. But the difference, this Georgia defense, Nolan Smith and Keely Ringo are my 2 players to watch for that Bulldogs defense. And they have given up 10 points or less 10 points or less in 5 of the 7 games they've played this year. How do you pick against them? It's simple. You can't. Georgia wins.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, it's all Bulldogs here, and I don't think it's close. We've talked about a little earlier, and obviously Tom just now. Anthony Richardson's woes, since that pretty outstanding performance against Utah so far this season. And I think it was last year. I just would not shut the fuck up on this show about how great Georgia's defense was. And this defense they have this year is just as good, if not better. Like Tom mentioned, they just don't let you score 10 points or less in, X amount of games this year. I just don't see a scenario that Florida wins this game or really hangs around. I know Missouri did give Georgia a game last week, but I feel like Georgia's going to be motivated and ready to go for this one, and the Bulldogs are going to roll over the Gators.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same camp here. I think most people probably are. maybe not as good of a Georgia team, at least what they're showing compared to last season, but they're still looking, I mean, pretty flawless. Sans that Missouri game, that was the one hiccup that they had. They had that three-headed rushing game. I I don't know. Like I want this to be close because I love rivalry games like this and the Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan State games being close. As a neutral fan, they're a lot of fun to watch, but I think Florida is just not uh, up to the standard of Georgia this season. I don't think they get anywhere close. Yes, Florida has feasted on some of the worst teams on their schedule, but they themselves have been feasted on anytime they played a good team. We saw how good Tennessee really is against Alabama. Florida did take them down to the wire. It was a 38-33 loss, but things just look too dysfunctional in terms of all-around play for them. Like we said, Anthony Richardson just he doesn't look comfortable at all. His performance isn't showing that. He needs some practice, and God help him if he goes to the draft next year, because I think he'll definitely fall down the pedestal, maybe into the later rounds if he
Day three.
does.
Day three.
Yeah. That wow, day three is pretty harsh. I was gonna say round four, but it's very
That is
possible.
day three.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I forgot they did it. I forgot they did only two. I thought second day was 2, 3, 4. All right. Well, yeah. There you go. Anthony Richardson maybe into day three. But yeah, Brock Bowers is going to be huge along with that running game. They even use him in the running game a lot, and it's been successful. So if you're Florida, I don't know how you really stop it. I don't think a bye week is enough time to prepare for this Georgia team that's just been kind of rolling along, holding on to that number one spot. Um, they don't have Jordan Davis to clog up that line anymore. They don't have the sacks coming anymore. They've only got 7 on the season, but that secondary is eating up those interceptions. And when they're not getting the interceptions, they have 22 pass deflections. So I don't know what. I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to be able to save this game at all. He's going to need performance of a lifetime. I don't think it comes. I think Georgia wins the world's largest outdoor cocktail party this year. Moving into our chaser slot, we have another game that might be a little bit of a trap game. We have Louisville taking on number 10 Wake Forest. Wake Forest favored it by Vegas, but Louisville somehow favored by a lot of analytics, including ESPN's FPI analytics that they do. So could be a game to watch if you don't want to watch any more Georgia destruction of the Gators. Tom, we'll start with you. Is it a trap game, or is Sam Hartman going to roll the Demon Deacons to another win here?
Folks, if you're watching this show, and this is just my opinion, I don't trust squat when it comes to analytics from ESPN. But Brian does have some good points. Louisville has looked impressive at times this season. Um, Wake Forest is still favored, though, by 3.5 on the road. I should mention that. And they took Clemson to overtime last month. So that's another game of note. Wake Forest back in the top 10. They're ranked 10th in the nation, 6-1 on the year. At Louisville, 4-3. Sam Hartman is a gem. We know that. He has a chance to play at the next level. 21 touchdowns, 3 picks. They have a solid running game featured by Justice Ellison and Christian Turner. And A.T. Perry is that go-to playmaker that Hartman has that makes him look as good as he is. Rondell Bothroyd on that defensive line, interior defensive lineman with 5 sacks. You don't see that every day in college football. So it's good to see Bothroyd getting some pressure up the trenches, which I think will be key because we know Malik Cunningham likes to run the football himself. Malik Cunningham does not impress me with his arm, but he does impress me with his legs. 503 yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. That is a potential game changer right there. Louisville does have a good, solid core of defenders. And Brian, that's to your point why I think Louisville should be considered as a potential upset in this game is because they have forced 16 turnovers this season through 7 games. So again, almost 2 turnovers a game, right? Monty Montgomery, middle linebacker, 3.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Another linebacker, Yasir Abdullah, 3.5 sacks, 4 pass defended, 2 picks, and a forced fumble. And Yaya Diaby, another guy that I really like. But when it's all said and done, guys, I just like Wake Forest a little bit more. I think I trust them a little bit more. I could see this being a field goal game, but I'm going with the better quarterback here. I'm going with the better quarterback, and who I think the better team is, Wake Forest.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, it's Wake Forest for me. I have not been sold on anything Louisville has done as a football program for fuck, I don't know, the past 5 years. Like it's just Satterfield doesn't even want to be there. It seems like half the time. Um, yeah, eh, I know Cunningham is a solid quarterback. I do like him under center, but it's Sam Hartman, it's A.T. Perry. Their connection is one of the best quarterback receiver connections in the country. Their defense has been playing outstanding so far. I think they have the better head coach in this matchup as well. It's all Wake Forest for me. I don't think this game is close.
Yeah. I want this also to be a bit of a trap game because I don't think I basically don't want Wake Forest to sneak in to the playoff for me. I don't think they're a good team, but I don't think they're good enough to waste a playoff spot in from what I've seen so far. Um, Andy, you said you don't know how long it's been since you trusted Louisville. The answer is probably 2017 because that's the last year that they had Lamar Jackson. So um, I agree with you on that front. Louisville, in this game, despite Wake Forest being a top 10 team, despite their offensive production, they might be able to pull it off, or at least make it close with Cunningham's run game. Tom highlighted it. His arm is not that good, but on the ground he can make things happen. Almost, similar to that Lamar Jackson style. I think Jackson probably had quite a bit better arm though, if we're being honest. But I do think Louisville comes up short here. Waste plays some really good football against some really good teams. You guys both talked about the connection between Hartman and Perry. That's probably going to eat up this Louisville defense. Yeah, I mean, not including the Syracuse game, opening game of the year, the only two losses here for Louisville have other two losses, I should say, have been by a combined 5 points. I think that margin spreads very wide here because I think Sam Hartman and this Demon Deacons team are going to eat up Louisville in Louisville. So I'm taking the Demon Deacons to win this game. Moving into 7:30, we have Tennessee, who has been rolling, taking on a ranked Kentucky team that is known to be pretty tough when they are ranked. They're at number 19 right now. Tom, can they pull off an upset here against a team that looks really, really good in the Tennessee Volunteers?
No, no. Uh, but I have to give Kentucky a little bit of credit. Any matchup featuring Will Levis and Hendon Hooker is must-see TV. If you're not watching this game Saturday night, what are you doing? Even if you're out at a Halloween party, whatever you might be doing, watch this game. This is going to be a really good football game. Kentucky's 5-2, Tennessee 7-0. The Wildcats defense holds opponents to just 16.5 points per game. Will Levis is back. He's healthy, 13 touchdowns on the year, over 1,600 passing yards. And I love their defensive back, Carrington Valentine, 7 pass deflections and 1 pick. But to be honest, guys, it ends there for Kentucky. I'm not impressed with anything else about their team right now. I mean, again, they had a loss at Ole Miss and lost by 10 at home to South Carolina. Ew. Anyway, Tennessee is an offense that averages 571 yards per game. 571. Hendon Hooker is the real deal. Hendon Hooker is the Heisman Trophy winner this season. And I say that with a lot of pride. Hendon Hooker has thrown for over 2,000 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, 1 interception. He also has 3 on the ground. And let's talk about Jalen Wright, great running back, and Jabari Small. They love pounding him the rock in the red zone. Man has 8 touchdowns on the season. They rely on their running game, and Jalen Hyatt is going off every week, scoring touchdowns left and right. The dude has 12 touchdowns through 7 games. Incredible. Also, defensively for them, their DBs are outstanding. Trayvon Flowers and Kamal Haddon each have 2 picks. They're really good in both press man coverage, I should say, and they're capable of dropping back into zone as well. We've seen multiple scheme looks for Tennessee defensively this year. And up front, The Vols got a nice young player in Byron Young, 3.5 sacks on the year, rolling with Tennessee.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, it's all Tennessee. It's not close. Hendon Hooker's the better quarterback. You have the better receiver as well with Hyatt. Um, I saw this week Will Levis compared himself to Josh Allen. I don't see that at all. I'm going with Rocky Top. They're going to continue their march to the college football playoff this week with a win over their rival Kentucky.
Yeah. I think the only way Kentucky gets a sniff of a chance here is if their D line really comes to play. They need to get to Hooker a lot because, as we've seen in the past couple of weeks, the man can do a lot. Even if it's not straight up sacks, they need to get him pressured because if he has any amount of time, he can basically throw the ball just in this general vicinity of Jalen Hyatt, and he's probably going to come down with a monster catch. Um, in the protection game, Tennessee has a huge edge here. Hendon Hooker's only been sacked 6 times. So, like I said, that D line really needs to break down Tennessee's O line if they want to get some pressure up in there. Whereas Kentucky's O line has struggled of late. And as good as Will Levis is, he's not going to be good when he's on the ground if he's being sacked. They've allowed him to be sacked 16 times in the last 5 games. That is just not doing it at all. Kentucky, they're one of those teams, they like to play the villain. I can see this game getting really dirty with a lot of flags. We saw it a few years ago when linebacker Cash Daniels got caught on camera twisting Kyle Trask's ankle in the pile. Looked like he was trying to break it, although he did not. He denies it. I've seen the clip. I don't think I believe him very much. Um, so yeah, I mean, this could get dirty, and they could try to make it into an absolute slug where penalties come into play. But I think Tennessee just has too much. You guys both touched on him, Jalen Hyatt. He is currently 7th in the country in receiving yards and 1st in receiving touchdowns. So that Hooker Hyatt combination, I think, is just going to be too much. I'm taking Tennessee to take down the Kentucky Wildcats. Moving into the Chaser for 7:30, our last game of the week here, we have Michigan in another rivalry game taking on Michigan State, who's been a bit lowly this season. Tom, who do you have in this game?
Again, the battle of the state, right? So again, Spartans 3-4 under 500, not very good. Number 4 Wolverines 7-0. They are very good. So I think if people who just view it records in this game could probably make a educated prediction based off of that. I think the question more here is that 23-point line, right? That they're giving the Wolverines right now at home. Again, Michigan, they're very similar to Georgia in what their identity is. They run the rock and they play really good defense. The Wolverines only give up 12 points per game. I'm not sure people would have thought that after all the players they lost in the draft. Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo, and Daxton Hill, to name a few, respectively. Again, their identity is to run you off the field on the offensive end. 242 rushing yards per game. That is no joke. Um, when I look at the Spartans, it took them 2 overtimes to beat Wisconsin last week, who fired their head coach following a 4-game losing streak for Michigan State. Peyton Thorne has been a thorn in the Spartans' side offensively. He has not been great. Jalen Berger, decent player on the ground. Defensively, they're okay. The Wolverines blew out Penn State last week. J.J. McCarthy, again, completing 77% of his passes. I think we could all agree, guys, McCarthy is an upgrade over McNamara, and I think that's worked out well for them. But who's the real MVP of this team? It's Blake Corum. Come on. I mean, 13 touchdowns, 900 yards, and a complimentary back in Donovan Edwards has helped them as well. Corum's able to get those breathers, and you don't have to run him through the ground every single game. The Wolverines also have a young, promising receiver in Ronnie Bell. And Giants starting left guard's younger brother, Max Bredesen, is the backup tight end for the Wolverines. I did not know that. I had looked that up this morning when I was doing the research, and I'm like, wow, the Giants starting left guard, his younger brother is the backup tight end for the Wolverines. Fun fact. Now, defensively, what do the Wolverines have? they have the best thing you haven't heard of yet in college football, and linebacker Junior Colson. He is a stud. And of course, Rod Moore on that back line with 2 picks on the year. They've picked up right where they left off defensively. So, I mean, Michigan's the easy pick here, in my opinion.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, it's another one on the card that I just don't think is going to be close at all. It's all about the Wolverines. Tom mentioned it. The best player on the field this Saturday is going to be Blake Corum. He's going to go for 150. He's going to score twice. And the Wolverines are going to roll over the Spartans. I don't see what there is to like about Michigan State going into this game. I know that's always tough when you're going up against an undefeated opponent. It is a rivalry game. It's a huge rivalry game. So those always do seem to, they mean more. They're closer. You know what they say, throw out the records when these two teams get together. But I don't think it's going to matter on Saturday. I think Corum and the Wolverines are going to run all over the Spartans.
Yeah. I'll try to give Michigan State a little bit of credit here. They were on a very bad slide at the beginning of the season. Mel Tucker doesn't have this team where he wants them, but they dug deep. Last week they put off a double overtime win against Wisconsin, so shows us a little bit that they might be able to do something surprising once in a while. The offense has been slowly improving, but their run game, it just hasn't been moving like in years past. They really need to open up the field for Peyton Thorne because he's not a top quality QB for Michigan State in the pass game. And to do that, they're going to need a really big game from Jalen Berger, but he only has 367 rush yards so far through 7 games this season. So a bit of a sticky situation there for how they get some offensive production. In terms of Michigan, everything is clicking for them. They ran over number 10 Penn State last week, like you guys said. They're really looking like a playoff contender, even more so than last year, I think. Tom, you mentioned McCarthy. Yeah, he's solidified both his starting role and my trust in this Michigan offense because you can't rely on just Corum. He's a really good back, but you cannot rely on just a star running back if you want to be one of those 4 playoff teams. And I do trust McCarthy from what I've seen in combination with Corum in that running game. I think we see a blowout here. The cheapest seat to get into this game this week is $210. So those Michigan fans really want to pile into that stadium and see a blowout here. And I think they will. I think Mel Tucker's team gets blown out of the stadium. Just an absolute murder that would do horror movie directors pride if they were watching it. So I think you take Michigan here and you take them with the spread because they look really, really good. That is going to wrap up our show for the week. Enjoy your Halloween weekend. Enjoy the games. Unless you're a Michigan State fan, as I've just pummeled them into the ground. Yeah, thank you for joining. Links are down in the description for this show, for Andy's show, for Tom's show as well. Hit that like and subscribe button if you can. It helps us out, obviously. And we'll see everybody next week.